Police union Popcru has condemned the shooting of a woman at Tembisa Hospital yesterday morning. The 30-year-old who was a nursing assistant at the hospital was fatally shot by a police officer who was her ex-partner. So according to authorities, the officer from the Ekurhuleni task team arrived in a state vehicle with blue lights flashing at the hospital's emergency entrance. He then proceeded to shoot her before turning the gun on himself. The police union says acts of suicide by members of the police are increasing at an alarming rate. Let's expand on that. We're joined by the policing union's Richard Mamabolo. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. You talk about these incidents increasing at an alarming rate, and you perceive that at the heart of this is deeply rooted underlying challenges faced by many among the South African police services ranks. What are those challenges?
Yes, thank you for that. We were quite worried about the increases. I think over the past 2 years, we've seen an average of at least 20 suicides within the service. And in most cases, those do affect close family members, because some of them do get to obviously become victims of such abuses. So it is quite a worrying trend. And of course, I think when we have engaged with some of the families, what has come out has been the fact that in most cases, these members are over-indebted, and there are issues around infidelity, substance abuse, but mainly it's due to some of the working conditions that our members are faced. You remember that we've got a staff complement of 177,000, which has to take care of over 60 million. Now, we go to different stations, you find that there are shortages of staff, and of course, the resources that are available are not sufficient enough in ensuring that members do their duties. So there are levels of stresses that are accompanied by such factors, which ultimately lead to members behaving in certain ways. And of course, it is within the nature of the SAPS that they work under gruesome conditions. They deal with crime scenes, they deal with accidents and all such things. So that as well has got an impact on their mental stresses. However, this challenge has been recognized by the SAPS, and they've been implementing employee health and wellness programs, which were introduced in 2006 and 2007. However, when you ask members about how these services have been beneficial to them, you realize that a lot of members do not use these services because they feel that they lack confidentiality and that they are not consistent. So these programs have in essence been reactive, as opposed to being proactive in ensuring that they are usually available to members, and members in large numbers get to know about them, so that whenever they do have such challenges, they can rely on them. So with the SAPS, when you have to get promoted and you've been through such programs, we believe that the lack of confidentiality creates a situation wherein your information would be known by those seniors who are supposed to interview you for higher positions. And part of the requirements within the SAPS for getting promoted is to obviously have a stable mental condition. So that has seemed to compromise a lot of chances of members in being promoted. So we think that this is an area which we definitely need to look into, not only as the SAPS, but as well as unions and of course all other stakeholders, so that we find ways in which we could ensure that we deal with this challenge before it gets to an extent where members are overwhelmed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
You've identified a myriad of issues, Mr. Mamabolo. Perhaps let's unpack them, right? So you speak about the many challenges that are faced by members of the South African police services, including trauma. They see a lot of things on a daily basis that many of us would not be able to stomach. Is that enough reason, though, to then inflict pain on the very community you are meant to protect and serve?
Look, that is no sufficient reason, of course, and I'm not saying that what happened is justifiable. We've obviously had a lot of such incidents where there are suicides and partners are killed. That is unacceptable. However, if we are to obviously find solutions, we need to look into the broader challenges, and what we are identifying here are some of the challenges. And of course, the work pressures that these members do face. So it's a multiplicity of challenges that have obviously resulted in such outcomes. That is why for us it's quite important that we have the best possible services available for these members, so that before they get to an extent where they've got such high mental pressures, post-traumatic stress disorder growing in the rate that is currently growing within the service, we need to actually have measures which would ensure that we can deal with this challenge at that level, as opposed to waiting for certain officers to react in the manner that has been demonstrated with the incident yesterday, and of course many other incidents. So there are certain considerations that definitely need to be made. As for what happened yesterday, we are totally against any form of actions that would lead to the loss of lives. We condemn such actions, and of course we will be emphasizing that amongst our members. But however, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we look into their working conditions, because I think part of the challenges that have been faced is that they are highly pressurized. South Africa has got a lot of challenges. They have to compete with criminal activities, and of course police are being killed on a daily basis. Their working conditions have been very poor. They are not getting being sufficiently remunerated by government. There are budget cuts currently. That then means that the kind of relationship that communities have with police is degrading, because correctly so, communities would assume that when police do not react to their conditions, therefore police are lazy. But you cannot expect 5 police officers to be safely looking after a community that has a population of over 30,000 people, as has been the case with the recent police stations attacks. So we need to obviously look into all these factors and look into how we can actually work together in ensuring that their conditions are improved.
Indeed. You speak of the employee health and wellness programs that are being offered to some officers. From, conversations with your members, are we seeing police officers taking this up at the rate at which they are impacted, especially when you look at the issues of stigma that's still attached to mental health issues? A lot of people see police to be macho when they're only human.
Yeah, definitely police are human, and of course I think it's a perception that we definitely need to work more on, in ensuring that members feel confident in taking up these services, because we have seen the results or the outcomes of not having gone through some of these programs that are being offered. However, we think from the side of the SAPS it's quite important that these processes are not used to frustrate certain members, especially with regards to them being promoted. So the confidentiality part is quite important. And of course, I think one of the other things is that, as I had indicated, that whenever these services are offered, there isn't some form of consistency which would obviously ensure that there are regular visits to ensure that these conditions have been dealt with. So under environments where such conditions are not taken care of, you end up having a lot of challenges wherein, even the relations between and amongst police officers themselves become sour within different stations. You look at the fact that a lot of our police officers are over-indebted, and of course, even within their working conditions, there have been a lot of charges that many of our officers face. So under circumstances where their stress levels are so high, you would imagine the kind of vulnerability it brings not only to the individuals but to their families, the community, and the SAPS as an organization as well. So these are quite important matters that perhaps need everybody to play a role in addressing.
Finally, sir, for us, you talk about a 170,000 and a bit staff capacity of police officers expected to police a population of some 60 million people. Your expectation ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's address later this evening?
Look, part of the commitments that the President made in 2019 in his maiden State of the Nation address was that we need to have violent crimes within the next decade. Now, immediately after having made such commitments, you have a Minister of Finance who cuts down the SAPS budget, which is still obviously impacting on the kind of service delivery that police are making. Just last week we were complaining about the uneven allocation of resources. So for any investment to come into the country, the President would well know that you would need, obviously, part of the preconditions would be the security of the country, and South Africa's crime rate is going up on a daily basis. The violent crime rate is going up on a daily basis, and that is not conducive for people who would initially want to come and invest into the country. So this security situation needs to be taken seriously. We think that government should revisit the budget cuts, especially within the SAPS, because even that 177,000 staff capacity, you still have about over 40% of those working in offices who are not on the ground. So that means there is lesser capacity for police to deal with the day-to-day challenges that are faced by South Africans. The private security industry has become 3 times bigger than the SAPS as it stands, and of course they've got a bigger capacity, meaning there are more firearms within the private security hands than those which are available for police, who have got a constitutional mandate to ensure the safety and security of South Africans. That is a disaster.
Something worth following up. Thank you very much, Richard Mamabolo. He speaks for the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union.